throughout the 20th century, composers not only tried to say something with their music, but they're also developing their own musical language. And so for Mozart and Haydn, there's a very strict style that they composed within. And then within that style, they made their musical statements. Beethoven expanded the style and brought us into the Romantic era, but there's still a different style. There are various camps. You had the Wagnerian camp, the Brahmsian camp, etc., and they still composed within a certain sort of playbook or whatnot. By the time you get to the 20th century, those branches became so far apart that composers individually would try to have a musical voice, but also have their own language in terms of trying to state what they're trying to do. And so Britten, even though he's part of the mid and early 20th century, really has his own musical language. And I think that's part of the fun, is trying to learn that musical language and then, of course, apply it to what he's trying to say. BCCO had a composition competition a few years back, and everybody was very nervous about it because oftentimes new music, it's not only the fear of the unknown, but fear that we're going to get pieces that are very, very difficult to comprehend, let alone perform. And it was, I think, a phenomenal experience because every single one of those three composers had wonderful pieces, of course, but they all had their own musical languages, and learning a little bit of who they were as well as what they were trying to say was fantastic, a lot of fun. And so Britten, large symphonic works, I don't think many in the chorus can point to the last time they performed a symphonic choral work by Britten. They might perform some of the smaller works. Benjamin Britten's War Requiem is a phenomenal piece, and it's a piece that needs to be performed more often for several different reasons. There are logistical difficulties in performing it, and there are musical difficulties in performing it. The logistical are very straightforward. It requires an incredibly large orchestra. In fact, it requires two orchestras, but a lot of orchestras make do putting one inside the other. And it requires a very large chorus, children's chorus, organ. It requires so many performing ensembles together at the same time. But I think musically it's very important because not only is it have the normal Requiem text, but the special part is that Britten uses the poetry of Wilfred Owen, this poet from the First World War, and intersperses it in between the movements of the Requiem. And so you get not only the meaningfulness of the Requiem text itself, but an incredible commentary on war, and it's a very, very powerful piece as a result. I've performed this work now twice. The first time was with the New York Philharmonic with Kurt Masur and the Westminster Symphonic Choir, and it was for a recording and an absolutely stunning performance. One of the things that really hit home the power of the music was Masur talking about, and actually, frankly, having difficulties with the tenor soloist, who I think he felt was a little bit flippant about the depth and the meaning of the music. And they would have these discussions, or rather, Kurt Masur would be having these very terse discussions and statements at the tenor, but he would say things like, "This needs more gravitas. The trumpets are acting like machine guns mowing down children, and you cannot sing it like that," in a response to this. And the discussion was very different than what I had seen before in rehearsals, because oftentimes, especially at a very high level, there's not enough time to talk about the reasons behind decisions in music making. Oftentimes, orchestra musicians and conductors and choirs at a very high level will talk about the lengths of notes or the volume or the tone, and they won't talk as much about the content of the work. And to have a sneak peek into this conductor is very, very, it was obviously very meaningful to him. Discussion with the tenor soloist really opened my eyes into the work in general, as well as, of course, the poetry, which I had never seen a structure like this before. I had been very familiar with the Mozart Requiem, and studied the Carnegie Requiem, which was the predecessor, the inspiration for Mozart's Requiem, and to have the form so manipulated by Britten for his own purposes in making such a political statement, a social commentary, I think was very powerful for me at that point. I performed this again with Pittsburgh Symphony as a choir member, with the Mendelssohn Choir of Pittsburgh, which is the major chorus for the Pittsburgh Symphony, and that was with my graduate advisor in Heinz Hall, with a very large chorus. And it was also a transformative experience because, as people know, performing works multiple times, you get to see different things in it. And being a part of the process that time, not just as a performer, but also preparing the work as his assistant, I think allowed for much more depth in terms of deciding, figuring out how musical decisions were made. And again, looking at the structure of the work and how that really is brilliant by itself, And so I think with BCCO, I think it's a very special moment because choruses like this don't usually have the opportunity to perform works like this. And because it is such a notable work and a masterpiece, the fact that we can achieve things like this and tackle pieces like this is really something special. So I think there's something that's important for the chorus to do because it's a challenge that it's definitely ready for, but it's something that the community needs to hear. The pieces like this shouldn't have the performances reduced because of logistics, and so I'm very excited to participate in it. I guarantee it's going to cause controversy of some sort in the process because it's a difficult work technically as well as topic-wise. So yeah, I'm very excited for it.